live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show. Welcome to the FTN Bets Cast for Tuesday, May 10th here at FTN Bets, sponsored by our good friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players, and now you can play on Sleeper in their new over-under game. It's really easy to play. So first, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like, and you're going to pick whether they go over or under their listed total. So for example, in the NBA tonight, could be the number of points a player scores, the number of turnovers he has, number of three-pointers, number of assists, number of rebounds. Once you figure out which ones you want to pick over or under, then you're going to choose an amount of money you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times all the way up to 20 times your money if you pick 5 for 5 and get them all correct. But the main reason why I'm excited about this over-under game on Sleeper is that it's the only app where you can join your buddies and all play together. It has a built-in group chat where you can see what I'm playing. I can see what you're playing today. We could all see what the guy in our group who's won 3 days in a row is playing, and we could all follow along with whatever his picks are. It's a lot of fun when everybody is sweating the same things and rooting for the same things to happen. And when you all hit, it's good when everybody in your group makes a little bit of money. So stop what you're doing today and download the Sleeper app now to play in their new over-under game. Have fun with your friends and make some money. Use promo code FTN Bets when you deposit, and Sleeper will match that first deposit up to $100, meaning if you put in $100, you will have $200 that you'll be able to play with. So again, download the Sleeper app. Use promo code FTN Bets when you deposit. There are terms and conditions that apply, so see the Sleeper terms and conditions of use for details. We have 2 games in the NBA here tonight. Both of the series are tied at 2-2, both of them with the home teams holding serve here, winning at home both games of the series in both of these series. The first one we're going to talk about here is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Miami Heat. So we move back to Miami for this series. Joel Embiid is listed as questionable, but I honestly can't see any way Joel Embiid does not play in a game like this that's as big as this game is. This is basically down to a 3-game series right now with Miami having home court advantage. So I can't see Joel Embiid not playing here. There are 6 guys on the injury report on the Miami side, which is basically been typical of this series. It's Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, PJ Tucker, Caleb Martin, and Gabe Vincent. Those 6 guys have been listed as questionable on and off throughout this series and even the last series as well. With the exception of Lowry sitting a couple games out, though, these guys are basically playing every day, even though they're listed as questionable. So I'm not going to get too excited about seeing all these questionable tags on the Miami side here. So let's see. This is what's interesting about this game to me. So I'm going to rewind a little bit and go back to game 1. Before the Joel Embiid being out news in game 1, the number on this game was Miami minus 4.5. After the Embiid news was announced, it went up to Miami. I think 7.5 is as high as it got. And then for the second game, it was Miami minus 8. Joel Embiid is going to be playing here, and now it's minus 3. Minus 3.5, I think, is what it opened at. Let me double check on that. Yeah, minus 3.5 is what it opened at. And you can now get Miami minus 3 over on both DraftKings and FanDuel at a minus 110. So again, what has really changed other than, well, obviously Embiid playing, but we thought Embiid was going to play before the first game when it was minus 4.5 too. So why is Miami 1.5 points below where they were in the first game right now? I don't really have an answer to that question for you. And that's the reason why I think there is some value on Miami minus 3 here. Like I said, if the market thought this should be minus 4.5 before the Embiid news in game 1, then you would expect it to be minus 4.5 in this game as well. There's, nothing that's really changed here. Miami's got all their guys that are playing. I mean, Kyle Lowry wasn't even supposed to play in that game, and he's going to be playing in this game. So I don't see why this is only minus 3 here. So I think we have value on the Miami side in this game. Again, DraftKings and FanDuel have it at minus 110. You can play it over there at minus 110. I think it's about a point, probably more like a 1.5 below where it really should be here. As for the Philly side of this game, if you want to keep rolling with the 76ers here today, you can get them at plus 3.5, minus 108 over on WinBet. There's a lot of plus threes on minus 110s. There's a couple other plus 3.5s that are juiced up a little bit, minus 112, minus 114. Win bet at minus 108, though. Best price in the market on that plus 3.5 if you want to be on the Philadelphia 76ers side of this game. As for the total in this game, the total is one that I'm not touching here. I don't have a lean one way or another. It opened at 210. It dropped a little bit now. You can play an over at 209 on Sugar House for minus 110, or you can play an under on WinBet at 209.5 minus 108 over on Win. 209.5 is the number we're seeing. Minus 110 at a lot of the other books out there in the market. The reason why I don't have a lean on this game is that we have seen 4 games in the series already. 2 of these games have been in the 220s. 2 of these games have failed to even reach 200. So with the number at 210, I mean, you're basically in the middle there splitting the difference. But, which way does the lean go, right? I mean, we had, 99, 79 in game 3. And then we had, 220 something points scored in game 4. There really hasn't been a pattern throughout this series on how these games have been played. Some of them have been played a little higher scoring, a little bit faster pace. Some of them have been played a little lower scoring at a little bit of a slower pace. I don't really want to mess with one side or the other on that because it looks to me like it's a coin flip. And if it's a coin flip, we don't really have any advantage one side or the other. And we're paying minus 108 or minus 110, things that are a coin flip that you have to play at minus 110. In the long run, you're going to wind up losing on that. So with the total here today, I'm staying away from it. I don't have a lean one way or another. Like I said, I think 210, 209, I think it's a great number. It doesn't really make a difference to me if it's 209 or 210 or 208. Because we've seen it go 20 points below and 15 points over so far in this series. Like I said, there's really no rhyme or reason to the way it's been going. There's no consistency to the way all these games have been played. So, basically at this point, if you're picking one side or the other on the total, you're basically just flipping a coin. So let's talk about some of the player props that I'm interested in here today. There are 3 that I'm looking at here. The first one, the only over that I like in this game is going to be Jimmy Butler over 25.5 points. This one I like more on the sports books than I do over on the sleeper app. You can get this at even money plus 100 over on FanDuel. And here's the thing, right? The last 2 games, Jimmy Butler has taken 20 and 22 field goal attempts. When you're looking for a guy to score 25 points, that's the things that you really want to look at. You want to look at the minutes that he's playing. You want to look at the shot attempts that he's getting because that's how he's going to have an opportunity to get there. He's played 38 and 41 minutes, so the minutes is not a problem. This guy's playing as many minutes as anybody else on any team in this, the playoffs at this point in time. He scored 33 and 40 points in the last 2 games, too. They're giving him the ball down low, letting him operate down there. He's getting the ball on rebounds where, they're putting Bam Adebayo up at like the foul line extended area so he can pull Joel Embiid out of the middle. And then they have some other mismatches down low that Jimmy's been able to take advantage of. And that's something that he's been doing well this series and has always done well. Again, Jimmy's going to go to the hole hard. He's going to get fouls. He's going to go to the free throw line. He's going to finish shots down there. And despite all the other guys that they have that can put the ball in the basket on this team, when they really need a bucket, it always comes down to the ball being in Jimmy Butler's hands. So I like Jimmy Butler over 25.5 points here tonight. Again, not as big a fan on the sleeper app of this, but I do like the fact that we could get it at even money plus 100 on FanDuel right now. That's a bet that I'm willing to make tonight. One that I do like a lot on the sleeper app is going to be Joel Embiid under 25.5 points. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could you play an under on Joel Embiid? Well, I could play an under on Joel Embiid because in the last 2 games, Joel Embiid has taken 12 and 13 shots. Now, that is well below the number of shots that you would expect Joel Embiid to take in a series, in a game, in, most of the other games that they played during the regular season. 12 and 13 means that he would have to be super, super, super efficient in order to score 26 or more points today, which is what he needs. Now, he has taken 23 free throw attempts, and I do expect him to have double-digit free throw attempts here today. It's just one of those things. The guy's just so big, and Miami's a little bit undersized. They're going to foul him a little bit here today, so he is going to get to the line and have some free throw attempts. But again, he's had double-digit free throw attempts in each of the last 2 games, and he's only wound up scoring 18 and 24 points in those 2 games. And he did so playing 36 and 38 minutes, so it's not like he can get more minutes at this point in time. I mean, 36 and 38 for a guy that's coming off an injury, that's a massive minutes load already. And this might be the game where they take it a little bit easier on him. Now, again, it's a game 5. We got 3 games left in the series. I don't think he's going to play 22 minutes or anything like that tonight. He's probably still going to play 35 minutes or so. But again, unless he's up there taking those 20-plus shots a game, getting to 25.5 points on, 12, 13, even 15 shots, it's not an easy thing to do. He's going to have to be very efficient from the floor. He's going to have to knock down his threes. He's going to have to get a lot of free throws and make them all. Again, can Joel Embiid score over 25 points? Absolutely. We've seen him do it a million times before. It's just not the way that they've been using him in the series. It's a tough matchup for him. Miami is a good defensive team, even though, Embiid does have a little bit of an advantage here. One thing that they did a lot of last game is dump the ball to him inside. They swung it from side to side to get him, basically one-on-one down there in the post. That's where he could dominate, but that's not where he's been playing most of the series. Joel Embiid likes to get the ball at the foul line, the top of the key, where he can get the ball and go to the basket going downhill and make things happen. And that's not really the easiest matchup here because Bam Adebayo is one of those centers that does have the ability to stay in front of him. And they also have guys like PJ Tucker and, a couple other guys that they can throw at him depending on the switches that, at the very least can make it tough for him driving. The place where he could really have an advantage would be if he parks himself down in the post, but that's not what they've been doing with him this series. And I'm going to assume that they're going to keep doing what they've been doing so far, especially since it worked the last two games to get them victories. This one I do like on the sleeper app because this is a minus 130 over on BetMGM. At minus 130, we're looking at a 56.5% implied probability of this happening. So this is one of those things that I do want to play. The Jimmy Butler one at even money is a 50% implied probability. So we want to bet on things that are more than a 50% implied probability. And at minus 130, this Joel Embiid one, 56.5%, something I like a lot as one of my over-under plays on sleeper today. And then the last player prop over under that I'm looking at here is Tyrese Maxey. I like Maxey to go under 19.5 points here today. That's minus 115 at BetMGM. So here's the big thing for me with Maxey, right? It's like, obviously the guy's playing a ton of minutes. So the fact that he's on the floor is good news. But the bad news here for me is that with Joel Embiid back, so the first two games without Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey averaged 18.5 field goal attempts. Now, if you're looking for a guy to score 20 plus points with 18.5 field goal attempts, that's a pretty good bet to make. But the last two games with Embiid back, he's only averaging 10.5 field goal attempts. So to score 20 points on 10.5 field goal attempts, again, you're going to have to be super efficient in this game. A lot of those are going to have to be 3-point attempts. He's going to have to knock them down. He would have to score a bunch of those drives that he's making to the basket or get fouled to get to the free throw line on him. He had, I think, 18 or 19 points in the last game. He had 21 in the game before. So he's been right around this number. But really, it's just, he's played well. He's shot well. He's definitely shot well from deep in the series. He's had a couple games, especially the fourth quarter in game 3. In game 3, I don't even think he scored in the first 30 minutes of the game. It was like 6 minutes into the third quarter before he got his first bucket. And then he finished with 21 points in that game, which was amazing. But he did it because he was on fire from 3. So I think his numbers are a little elevated here. Normally, I would have thought Maxey would be around 15.5, 16 points with Joel Embiid playing. So the fact that it's still up at 19.5, which is around the number 2021 that we were seeing when Joel Embiid was out. And Maxey does take a big hit with Embiid out. We just said, basically he's lost about 40% of the field goal attempts that he took in the first two games since Joel Embiid has been back. So I don't think Maxey's a guy that's going to score 20-something points here in games that Joel Embiid is also playing. So I like the under on Tyrese Maxey here today. Again, I like this one on sleeper. I like the Embiid under a little bit better than I like the Maxey under here. So I would rather play that as my sleeper play of the day. But I think you could play both of these. I think the under on both of them is the way to go. Plus, I think that this game is going to favor Miami here. Like I said, I think I like the Miami -3 here. I think that's a good number for them. So I'm expecting Philly to come up a little bit short in the offense category. So let's move on and talk about the game in the West right now. The Phoenix Suns taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Honestly, after the first two games of this series, I thought this was going to be a sweep or a 4-1 Phoenix victory. But Dallas looked great in the last two games. They played really well. They jumped out to early leads in both of those games, especially the last game. They jumped out to an early lead, and then they just kind of held on to it. They were up 10 in the first quarter, and it felt like every time Phoenix made a run, they got it down to 4 or 6 points or so. Dallas would hit a couple shots and get it right back up to 10. They shot the ball pretty well in Dallas. Now, that's a thing that a lot of people talk about. The role players tend to shoot well at home, tend not to shoot well on the road. If those guys aren't knocking down shots, Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock and, Maxi Klieber, if those guys are knocking down shots, this team is dangerous because obviously Luka is, a handful to try to stop there in the middle, going to the basket, always winds up drawing that second guy. If not, he winds up finishing himself. And when he draws that second guy, that's his advantage. What he's good at is finding the open man, kicking it out. And if those guys are knocking down shots, this is a very tough team to guard because you can't double them now because you're going to leave one of those guys open. And if you got them all knocking down shots, you got Bullock knocking down shots, you got DFS knocking down shots, you got, Klieber knocking down shots. I mean, it's very tough to defend this team when they can get that kind of spacing on the floor. If you double, there's going to be somebody open. You give them open shots, they're going to knock them down. So really what Phoenix has to hope for today is that because they're back in Phoenix and they're not at home in Dallas anymore, that these guys don't knock down that shots, because that's what happened to them last game. Every time Phoenix made that run, somebody on Dallas would knock down a big three and it would go from 4 all the way back up to 7, but then they'd get a stop and somebody else would knock one down. And next thing you know, it was like, wow, it was just a 4-point game that I thought was getting close. And now all of a sudden it's double digits again. That's what they need to avoid. That's what they need to look out for here. But I mean, really, what do you do? Like, we've seen them where they let Luka kind of play one-on-one there with guys like Chris Paul guarding him or Mikal Bridges guarding him. And Luka had 30, 40 points in some of the early games of the series. Then they started to come down on him a little bit in Dallas, and he kicked it out, and all these other guys started knocking down threes. But that's why they're a playoff team, right? Like, there's no easy way to guard this team. You have to choose your poison. Are you going to try to let Luka beat you by himself? Or are you going to take Luka away a little bit and, force these secondary pieces to make shots? So far, the forcing these secondary pieces to make shots hasn't really worked out for Phoenix. So we'll see how it works out in this series here today. Let's see. The number on this game is, it opened at 5.5. And you could still get the -5.5 on BetMGM right now, but it's juiced up at -115. Most of the other books have moved this up to 6 or 6.5, which makes a lot more sense to me because remember, the first game of the series, it was 6.5. That was the number here. So coming back to Phoenix right now, I would have assumed that it would be that same 6.5. Remember, going into the 2 games in Dallas that Dallas won, Phoenix had beat this team 6 times in a row, and 5 of those 6 times they had beat them by at least 7 points or more. So the 6.5 number made sense to me. The fact that we could still get it at 5.5 right now on BetMGM at -115, I definitely think there's some value there, even if it is juiced up a little bit at that -115 there. You can get some -6s at -110, but I'd rather play the -5.5 and give up the extra 5 basis points at -115. So that's the way that I'm looking at playing the side here today. If you want to be on the Dallas side of the game, the +6.5, that's juiced up as well. The best place you can get the +6.5 on Dallas is on Bet Rivers. Bet Rivers has this at -114. That would be the place that you want to play it if you want to get money down on the Dallas Mavericks side here today with that +6.5 points. As for the total hasn't really moved in this game. It opened at 213. It's still sitting at 213 here. You can play an over on that 213 on WinBet at -108. That's the best price on that side. You can play an under at 213.5. Sugar House Bet Rivers has this at -110. I mean, do I lean? I lean to the under in this series, but really, I don't want to play it on either side. Like I said, Dallas looked great at home. They were knocking down those shots. And if they're knocking down shots, it forces Phoenix to have to play a little bit faster too. Listen, Dallas during the year was one of the slowest paced teams in the league. And because of that, they didn't give up a ton of points. Phoenix was a little bit faster paced, but they were such a good defensive team that they also didn't give up a lot of points. So at the beginning of the series, I was expecting this to be a very low scoring series, but you know what? We've had some higher scoring games here today. So I don't want to really mess with the total when, again, I don't really have a good feeling on which way it should go and, which games have been the outliers here. There's a chance that Phoenix just blows the doors off of Dallas here if those guys don't make their shots. But if those guys are making their shots in this game, this could be a 115, 110, or, 120, 108 kind of final here, which would be well over the total here. So if I had to pick a lean, it would be to the over in this one. But at the same point in time, like I said, I'm not really looking to play it in this series. I'm just kind of staying away from it here. And I think that's the smart move. So let's talk about some of the player props in this one. Normally I start looking, especially in the playoffs, you got to think in the playoffs that the superstars are the guys that you can have the most faith in. But I actually don't have a ton of faith in the superstars in this series at their numbers. Devin Booker is at like 26, 27 points, depending on where you look here. And that's a good number for him, right? Like some of his bad games, and I say bad games, his bad games are still better than the average player, but the bad games for him, he's scoring 24, 25. The good games, he's getting 30 plus. So can he go over this number? Absolutely. But I think it's kind of a coin flip. I think he has as good a chance of going over as he does of going under. So there's not really a lot of value there. Chris Paul has not been playing well lately, so I don't really want to mess with him, but he's also Chris Paul, so I don't want to bet against him and take the under on his numbers either, even though he hasn't been putting up that, that great of numbers. DeAndre Ayton's had some big games in this series. DeAndre Ayton's had some games where he's kind of faded away. He's had some good rebounding games in the last two, but his rebounding numbers up. So, when you start looking at this stuff, there's not a lot of value on some of the superstars in the series. Same thing with Luka. Luka's numbers up to 33. On a good Luka Doncic game, 33, he could pass that in the third quarter. But most of the time, he's probably going to be scoring in the 20s, especially if they're trying to get the ball out of his hand and force these other guys to make these shots from the outside. So, Luka is a guy that I would actually play the under, but do you ever really feel comfortable playing any under with Luka Doncic? I mean, this is a guy that could put up a 40, 15, and 10 triple-double here tonight, and nobody would really blink an eye and say, wow, that's crazy, because we've seen him do it before. So, again, staying away from some of the superstars. So that leaves me some of the secondary players, the role players, or some of the guys that I'm looking at here. One that I like a lot on the Phoenix side is going to be Jay Crowder over 10.5 points. This is minus 135 on BetMGM. So they're giving us like a 57, 58% implied probability of happening here today. So I really like the over 10.5 Jay Crowder points. The 4 games in this series, he scored 15, 19, 15, and 11. And the thing I like the most about it, especially the last 2 games, he's played 36 minutes in each of the last 2 games. The first 2 games he played under 30 minutes. So if his minutes are going to stay this high, 30, 35, 36 minutes, that's going to give him more opportunities to score points out there. Now, again, he's getting some wide open threes, but he's going to continue to get wide open threes because he's the guy that they're kind of leaving open to double team guys like Ayton and Chris Paul when Chris Paul goes to the basket. And Jay Crowder has made him pay a couple times. He shot the ball pretty well this series. He'll get a random rebound and a point there. He'll get a finish running the floor on a fast break or so. If he knocks down 2 threes here today, I think he gets over this 11 points easy. If he knocks down 2 or more than 2 threes today, this is a lock that he's going to get to that number. So, he's averaging, I actually like his rebounding number too here today. 5.5 is the rebounding number. He's averaging 7 in the series, hasn't had less than 6 in any game, but I prefer the points to the rebounds if I had to choose one or the other. But I did want to mention that I do like not only his points, but also his rebounding number here today. And again, for a similar reason, if he's going to be playing 36 minutes instead of 30 or less, which is what he saw in the first couple games, this is a guy that's going to be able to put up numbers if he's out there on the floor. Points and reboundings being the 2 things that he's going to put those numbers up for. And then the other one that I'm looking at here today on the other side of this game is going to be Maxi Klieber over 9.5 points. This is minus 130 on BetMGM as well. So again, a 56.5% implied probability. He's averaged more than 12 points in the series, and he hasn't had less than 9 in any game. So there's only one game that he played where he had 9 that he would have been below this number. Every other game that he played, he was over the 9.5 points. So he's basically cashed on this number in 3 or 4 games in the series already. Again, minutes being a big thing for me. During the regular season, he played 24.5 minutes. The last 2 games of the series, he's played 33 and 34. So you're looking at a 33% bump in the number of minutes that he's playing. If a guy's going to get a 33% bump in the number of minutes he's playing, then you also got to give him a 33% bump in the number of points that he's going to score. He averaged about 8 points this year. So if you're going to give him a 33% bump on that, he's going to be above 10 into double digits, 10 and change or something is what it comes out to. So that's really what we're looking at here, is that as long as his minutes stay up, this is a series where he's already proven that he can get double-digit points. He's done it in 3 or 4 games. I think that this should be, something that's more like a minus 150 or minus 160. So at minus 130, I think there's value there. Now, again, I don't want to play it on the sports books at minus 130 because that is a little bit too much juice for me. But we can get this number over on the Sleeper app as well at that 9.5. So if we could get the number at 9.5 on Sleeper, and it's got a 56, 57% chance of happening, definitely something that I'm going to be interested in and definitely something that I'm going to look at. So let's talk about Sleeper here today. Let's find our play of the day over here on Sleeper. Again, there are 2 unders that I like in the 76ers game. Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey are the 2. Embiid is the one who has the better odds based on what you'd be getting at the sports books for him. Minus 130 for Joel Embiid to be under 25.5 points here today. That means it's a 56% probability that Joel Embiid does not get to 26 points here today. I like that as my play for the first game on the Sleeper app. And then the other one that I'm looking at here today, I kind of like the Maxi Klieber one a little more than I like the Jay Crowder one, but I like them both. So you could go with either one of these. Crowder technically is the better play based on the odds in the sports book. His price at MGM minus 135, whereas the price for Klieber is minus 130. Again, you're talking a difference between 56.5 and like 57.5%, 58%. So it's not a massive difference, but it is a difference of 1 to 2% basically there. So I like the Klieber one more, but like I said, you could play the Crowder over as well. Either one of them I think is good. But for me, my play of the day over on Sleeper is going to be Joel Embiid under 25.5 points and Maxi Klieber over 9.5 points. Now you can go down into the description of this podcast right now. You'll see where you can click on to get over to Sleeper to sign up. When you sign up, when you deposit, make sure you use promo code FTN Bets. Using promo code FTN Bets, whatever amount of money you deposit up to $100, they will match that, giving you twice as much money to play with. Now, obviously, as you guys know, I always say if you can afford to put in the full $100 to get the full deposit bonus, that's how you're going to take advantage of it the best way. So put in that $100, use promo code FTN Bet. You'll have $200 to play with. If you drop it on the Joel Embiid and Maxi Klieber contest play that we talked about here today, the payout will be $600. So $100 out of your pocket to get you back $600 if you're correct on it. That's a plus 500 payout here, which is much better than you would get on any sports book by putting these two together. If you parlay any of these two together on a sports book, the best payout you're going to get is probably going to be like $330 if you invest 100. So would you rather win $230 in profit, or would you rather make $500 in profit? If you'd rather make the 500, go down to the Sleeper app right now. Make sure you sign up, use that promo code FTN Bets, place this bet, and get basically double the return for the same exact, play that you can make tonight on these two guys in the parlays. So there you go. That's going to wrap it up for our NBA FTN Bets Cast talk for Tuesday, May 10th here at FTN Bets, sponsored by our good friends at Sleeper. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.